What it do, beautiful people? Life is good, God is good. Remember, you're too blessed to be stressed, cause you're walking on the ground, you ain't in it, you dig? Man, listen, we gonna tap in real quick about arsenals that you see while in prison. Weapons that you see behind the wall, behind the gate, whatever. You feel me? So, when I started doing time in Florida prison was back early 2000s. Early 2000s. Like very beginning. And back then, at least right now I'm going to talk about Florida prison, right? So back then, they used to give you one razor when you went through reception and all that stuff, right? And they did what they called a razor exchange. So, when they call a razor exchange, they would check, make sure the blade was there, blah, 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 blah. So, the problem with that was people were busting them open and, slashing people with the blade. The big lick in reception was the people that was gang banging or whatever must have been broke boys, because what they would do is they would sit in reception out on the yard and they would watch people that would go and hit the canteen window, right? So these people go hit the canteen window, and if you wasn't affiliated or you didn't have a little squad with you or whatever, and you was like a loner, or they could tell you was soft and you wasn't going to get it in or anything like that, what they would do is they would come by while you were carrying your net bag and they would hit it with the razor blade. All your shit would fall out and everybody grabbing and running with your shit or whatever. So that was the first problem with the blades, right? Main problem was people getting slashed. What you call buck 50, whatever you wanted to call it, but people was getting slashed. And then, at least in Florida prisons, especially in the JIT camps, we call it get fired up. When somebody comes and fires you up, they, basically trying to take you out the game. So, especially in JIT prisons, the main way of firing somebody up was with your combination lock. And they'd either put it inside the net bag, they'd put it inside of a sock, whatever, and BAM! Bust you wide open. I'm talking about wide open. You can usually tell when somebody being hit with a lock because the scar they have is like a horseshoe shape. That's just what it is. When you get busted with that lock, a lot of times the way it opens you up to stitch you up, it's like a horseshoe shape, whichever way it goes. Me personally, it was always, because what happens is you put that lock inside of a sock and they would try to fire somebody up with it, and you go to swing or whatever, it would rip the sock sometimes. So then people started taking their net bags for their canteen or their laundry bags, whatever, rolling it up real tight, and then sliding it through the lock while it was locked and tying it, because then it ain't going nowhere. You feel me? But I'll tell you this. The craziest thing I seen weapon-wise in the Florida state prison system, and I'm not going to say my dog's name because he's still doing time, but he was the head crown for the Kings at the prison I was at. And man, listen, when I tell you, this dude had a lawnmower blade. A lawnmower blade like this. And it was about that thick. You couldn't bend it. You couldn't do nothing to that bitch. And somehow or another, he had it filed down to a... I'm talking about, this thing looked like a real deal hunting spear. I mean, it literally good 3 feet long, that thick of metal, and it was about that wide. I swear to God, you could make a human shish kebab with that thing. Boy, look at him. So that's the craziest one in Florida I've seen. When I was up in New York prison, this is where I got introduced to the real deal scalpels. Like surgical scalpels, X-Acto scalpels, all that. And that's what they were slicing people with up there. Now, I'm going to tell you this. New York prison, that razor tag shit is off glass. I'm talking about every day. I kid you not. Every day, 2 to 3 people getting slashed with the scalpels. And I mean, this shit is crazy. So they have a number 11 scalpel. And then they had another one, which I think it was like a number 13 scalpel or something like that. Anyways, they had a little hook on it. And, you know, they would creep up and with the one with the hook, instead of slicing you like they normally would, they had a hook, so they would come up behind you and grab right here with it and pull, and it would just rip all that open. That shit ain't no joke. I've seen in New York prison, I've seen a zip gun. You know what I'm saying? I've seen real deal street buck knives, like slide open. I've seen a switchblade in New York prison. I've seen all that. But let me tell you how they do this with them scalpels and stuff up there, right? So, of course, in Florida, it's called, you know, your weapon is called a shank, a knife, whatever. New York prison, they call it a gun. Go get your gun. You know what I mean? So, of course, when I first landed in the New York prison, I hear somebody say, "Oh yeah, bro, something about a gun." I look, I said, "What? Y'all, what, where, man?" Because I ain't ever seen one of them in the chain gang. I ain't gonna lie to you. You know what I'm saying? But it was referring to his shank or whatever. So that blew my mind at first. So, you know, they always say, "Oh, we go gun for gun, you know, knife fighting, this and that, So, I'm going to tell you how they do this. Majority of the time, when they catch you with that scalpel or that hook scalpel or whatever, right? This shit is crazy. Now, I ain't going to say how many times I partaked or whatever, but when I first got to the New York prison system, right, I was witnessing this shit like crazy. I was at Wyoming Correctional Facility, which is directly behind Attica. It's called Baby Attica. It is all the way lit. I'm talking about all the way lit, right? So, check it in. Tap in for part 2, and I'm going to tell you how these dudes creep up on people and get the business in.